If I may have your attention, all true rattlers, if I may have the attention of all true rattlers, that includes Mr. Excitement. My, I got a orange and green cap that I like to wear, but I decided to wear this hat, and my wife been beating me up because she says it looks like a little boy's hat. And I told her when I was growing up, my favorite cowboy was Lash LaRue, and he had a hat just like this. And I said he has a whip. I'm gonna, I'm gonna leave, I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm gonna stop right there. Uh, yes, sir. Well, uh, I'm happy to know that. I wasn't aware of that. Thank you. We're gonna get started with a video first before we get to the program. It's 11 minutes long. It's the Ken Riley celebration. And Barn, are we ready to go? Okay. All the lights, please. Yes, yes. Growing up, you had told me you were going to have some early technical problems. I would have worked with you. Mm. Get it going. Uh, Before we get to the president, I want to recognize a few people, just a few people. I don't think we give enough credit to what some of our employees at FAMU do. And if I had one wish, I would somehow get some people to stop saying that black folks don't give back to their alma mater. And that has not been my experience. Last chance I looked, all of you guys were black folk. uh, and I'm kind of sorry that Reverend Holmes could not make it. He's going to be represented by James Matthews. And I had a story for Reverend Holmes, but since he's not here, I'll tell it to you. It's about a preacher who said, if I had all the whiskey in the world, I'd throw it in the river. And if I had all the wine in the world, I'd throw it in the river. And if I had all the beer in the world, I'd throw it in the river. And then he turned to the choir director and said, okay, what song are we going to start out with? And the choir director said, everybody stand and sing, Shall We Gather at the River? I know. Uh, uh, Leroy, I know you had one, but I had to tell that one for you. Yeah. Coach Simmons hasn't made it yet. Okay. I want to start out with a brief presentation. Mike, can you hand me one of those plaques, the one that has Aubrey Perry on it? Dean Perry, you can just stay right there in your seat for right now, because I want you to come up to a round of applause. Thank you, Mike. This is kind of a summer story, and but I remember when one of our band students got beat up pretty bad in a hazing incident, and he was in the hospital with broken ribs. And I was telling Dr. Humphreys that we need to go out and see the student, and he was very busy as he always was. And he told me after a couple of times not to ask him anymore. But by that time, I knew him pretty well, and I could take his outbursts and not be bothered too much by it. For the third time, I asked him. He said, "Get out of my office! Don't come back up here anymore." But then when 5 o'clock came, Mrs. Pettis called me and said, Dr. Humphrey said, meet him and Rogers at the car. And we went out to the hospital. And when we walked in the hospital room, the young man's parents, I forget where he was from, his mother saw the president and burst out crying. Embraced Dr. Humphreys. The boy's father came over and embraced him. They were so happy to see the president taking the time to come out and see the student. And I didn't know how moved Dr. Humphreys was by that. But on the way back to campus, it was after 5 o'clock, but he said, I need to talk with Aubrey Perry. And Aubrey, I don't know if he talked with you that evening or was it the next day. But I do remember, I think he told you, and you can correct me, Aubrey, Dean Perry, I want to report on the band on my desk every Friday. Now, I don't remember if it was every Friday, but I know it was quite frequent. And during his latter part of his illness, and we talked frequently, I would just call him to check on him. And I guess this was about 3 or 4 months before he passed. And he said, Eddie, you remember that time we went out to the hospital to see that band student? And I thought, wow, that's what he's thinking about. He's still thinking about that band student. And then he said, we got it straight, didn't we? I said, yeah. And he said in that very strong voice, Perry did a good job. And I said, yes, Mr. President, he did. Dean Perry is just a symbol of the kind of administrators FAMU has had since this beginning, who does a good job. But people don't know about it. People know there are always a few people who think they know more about what's going on at the university than really what's going on. And let me say right now, since Coach Simmons has come in, the only thing that goes on at the university that we know more than the leaders is football. But Dr. Perry, for your many outstanding years of service, and I'm gonna try to do more of this. Mr. President, I want to have a plaque for Tiffany for next week. She'll be here. Yvonne. Now, Madam Vice President, I don't have your plaque here today. Your office told me you were not coming. And she reminded me that you would be here next week with the basketball coach. Is that right?
It was. I just left the meeting with Commissioner Bill Proctor. It ran short, and so I made my way over here.
She told me that there was no way you'd be here today. Well, I don't have a plaque, but I'd like to present it to you next week. And I'll just take a brief moment. Well, I'm going to save that for when the president comes up. Dean Perry, I have nothing on this plaque about how you got the band straight, kept them straight. But I'm calling these plaques the Unsung Rattler Award. And there are a lot of unsung Rattler heroes out there. And we're going to try to name a few of them this year. I'm going to need a lot of money for plaques, people. These things are expensive. So, Dean Perry, would you come forward? Let's give Dean Perry a round. This plaque has at the top of it the 220 quarterback club, 220 quarterback club supporting FAMU with a football and a Rattler emblem. And my wife Jerry Jackson designed that plaque, and she didn't want to do it, but I'm sorry, Mr. President, but I put my foot down. So this says the 220 Quarterback Club Unsung Rattler Award presented to Aubrey Perry, PhD, retired Dean of the FAMU College of Arts and Sciences, for distinguished service as an administrator and full professor of psychology. Presented August 9th, 2023, 220 Quarterback Club, Eddie Jackson, President Dean Perry. If you would just say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is indeed a signal honor. I wondered why you were insisting on my coming here today, but I guess I should say something about my coming. I don't know if Mr. Jones is here, but the last time I was asked to come here to the 220 Club on the official capacity, I was to give a eulogy for Tom Mason. I think that everybody is still here today, so you don't have to worry about any eulogy being presented, because everybody looks like they're in pretty good health to me. I don't know about myself, though, but anyway. I do want to say one thing though about the Kenneth Riley presentation. Uh, some of you have heard this before, but it's deserving to be mentioned again. I had the honor of teaching Kenneth when he was a student at FAMU. And this was during the time when nominations were being made for the Rhodes Scholarship. And Kenneth was one of our stellar scholars here at the university. And I can tell you that I've had students to come through under my leadership or whatever it was, and they were very, very impressive in terms of their scholarship and their character and their overall generosity to the university. And Kenneth, by no stretch of one's imagination, certainly filled the bill in all of these respects. So I want to congratulate posthumously Kenneth Riley for his induction into the Hall of Fame. And with that, Mr. President, I'm going to turn this microphone back over to you.
Okay.
And thank you for the honor.
Thank you, Dean. Mike, would you look in there and see if you can find a plaque with your name on it?
If I can still spell right, that's my name.
I never know what Dr. Walker's going to do when she come up here. I held my breath. Yes, yes. Oh, okay. That's very fine. Oh, yes. I always say, thank you, Doc. Thank you. Michael Smith, Mr. Excitement. And I always like to say to Michael, I didn't know they call you Mr. Excitement too, you know. Also, okay, also a word. Uh, Dr. Robinson was interim president a number of times. And I think, Mike, you were interim director of athletics a few times too, right? But Mike has done a tremendous job. The last meeting we were having about the Cooler Center, he referred to that some people said he looked like he was 20 years old. I don't see that, Mike. but 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 not only has he been an excellent administrator and came to the aid of the university at difficult times, two things stand out to me. One was the last year when we had the problem with compliance and the issues regarding all of that, and there was a little turmoil going on. And Mike, who was in charge, kept his cool. And one of the things he did, because it turns out that we needed a combination of not only community and university people to work together, and the church, Reverend Holmes, and Mike got on the phone and called Reverend Holmes, and we got this problem working. We needed buses to take the team to the airport, and all that. We pulled it off. I really think a lot of people said, "Well, that was a negative time." I think it was one of our finest hours, and I think it was one of Mike Smith's finest hours. And the second occasion was Madam Vice President. We've had a couple of bad first home game days, and Now, Mr. President, I heard this story, but somebody told me that after the first home game where there was a major problem, that you told your staff, if this happens again, I'm gonna clear this room of everybody in here. I don't. That's what they told me. So you don't want to be around the president when he gets angry. But the next year, Michael was in charge as interim athletic director, and we had a very good opening home game day celebration with very few issues and very few incidents. So he's a quiet leader. He's like Ken Riley says, he speaks softly, but he performs at a very, very high level. And Mike, we just want to recognize you briefly for your great work as a rattler all these years. If you would come forward. Michael Smith. My wife designed that logo.
No, I contacted first.
Okay. Okay, it's a 220 Quarterback Club Unsung Rattler Award presented to Michael Smith for outstanding service as interim director of athletics, including a smooth, nearly trouble-free 2022 opening season first home game operation. Thank you so much, Mike, for all you've done. Okay. Mike.
Good afternoon. When y'all gave me this mic, I could see Tiffany's eyes, and Dr. Robinson looked at me like short. All right. y'all know I'm great with brevity, but I want to say thank you all for this recognition. As Dr. Perry said, I got the phone call and said I need to be here. I didn't know. I reached out to my vice president yesterday. I said I'm supposed to be at 220 Club. Not sure what it is, but I don't want to do anything outside of your leadership. So surprise to me. Thank you all so very much. When it comes to unsung heroes, you all have been my heroes. I think y'all know every time I come in here, I make my way around the table since I've been a student and an employee here at this university. So many of you have poured into me since I've been here, not just me, but my family. And so I'm very appreciative, very humbled, did not know this was going to happen. But I just want to make sure y'all know, as I said before, you are the family that I'm a part of called Florida A&M University, and I appreciate this so very much.
Thank you, Mike. Hey, Mike, do you mind? I don't mean to put you to work, but would you look for Coach Simmons' name on one of those flyers?
I'll just take my new seat.
Okay. Okay. Once again, going back to last year, Coach Simmons, and I can say this because despite my youthful good looks, I've been around a long time. I finished FAMU and we were on the trimester system then, and I completed my degree. I think it was the second. I think it was in April, because by July, just a few months out of college, I was director of sports information for Jake Gaither. Now being in the right place in the right time, and having been editor at the FAMU and in the Rattler yearbook, I think had a lot to do with that. Plus, I was a student assistant in the public relations office. But and the great Jay Gaither called me over to his office and gave me a test, a grammar test, and luckily it was a very easy grammar test. And I passed it, and he said, "Baby, I think you're gonna do all right." So, but I mentioned that because in Jay Gaither's day, um, I think coaching was a little different from what I observed then and now. Back then, of course, Gaither had a problem with a player. He would say, "Young man, I have any more problems out of you, I'm gonna give you a banana, a comic book, and a Greyhound bus ticket back to your home." And that would usually get the job done because Jake had that aura of greatness about him. And of course, this is an old story. Now, most of you have heard this one, but it's a true story. But it's FAMU in 19, I believe it was 59, took an undefeated team up to Southern University, and Southern beat us 59-20. And when the team came back, and the bus pulled up by Lee Hall, the student body was out there in great numbers, and they were applauding. And they start shouting, "We want the captain, we want the captain." So Jake told the captain, "Go out there, don't make any excuses. Just tell them we're going to try to do better next time." So the captain went out, and he came back, and they started hollering, "We want Coach Gaither, we want Coach Gaither." So Jake went out there, and he called all the students, you don't remember, kids. Everybody was kids. He said, "Kids, they just beat us. They ran through us, they ran over us, they ran under us, they ran around us. We just couldn't stop. They just beat us." And then he said, "But I tell you this, somebody's got to pay." And the next week, we were playing Maryland Eastern Shore in the Orange Blossom Classic. And those of you who remember that, the team scored 63 points on Maryland Eastern Shore. And the Rattlers won something like 63-20. I consider that moment equal to Coach Simmons' performance this past football season. And, thank you, Shirley. Thank you, Shirley. I like to run by what I'm going to say by a few people who are smarter than me. And a few of them said, "Well, let's not go back and talk about that. That wasn't necessarily a good time." But I said, "Well, we are stronger than that." I really think, in a way, it was Coach Simmons' finest hour, because after two losses, including the loss to Jackson State, somehow he found a way to get that team back at a level that they won 9 consecutive games. Now, that is a masterful, masterful coaching job. And I wondered how he did it. And I think as I studied Coach Simmons and listened to him, the difference is his coaching style and the old coaches of long ago, the my way or the highway coaches. He tells the team that he loves them. Now, I don't know about you, but I know a lot of young black kids, young black men, boys on their way to becoming men, don't hear that phrase a lot. But he means it. I went to a mini family reunion a couple of months ago. My sister is one of those people. Whenever she finished talking to you on the phone, she says, "Love you." And I told my family, I said, "Now, my family got a habit of doing that too." I said, "Now, all the people who say that, my sister is the only one I know who really, really means it." And I said, "Just say it too many times to too many people." And I said, "I know Harriet means it when she says it." And when I got back home a few days later, my niece called me and said, "Uncle Eddie, I love you, and I don't care what you say." I said, "Okay, all right, all right." But that's a powerful thing, to have a black man that you admire gives you a second chance and sometimes a third chance. And every now and then he lets them know how he feels. And I think they sensed that. And I think one of the reasons they came back and won those 9 straight games the way they did, the way they fought for Coach Simmons, is because they know how he feels. Coach, to me, that's a powerful, powerful thing. I'm about to get emotional here. God dog it. They're gonna think I'm not a tough guy. Uh, I am moved by that. Jerry, when I get in trouble, I call Jerry to come take over. But coach, if you come forward for just a moment, say 220 Quarterback Club Unsung Rattler Award presented to head football coach Willie Simmons for leading the Rattlers to 9 straight wins after losing the first 2 games of the 2022 season. I wanted to get more in depth, but I think that settles it, coach. Yeah. Have a good Mark.
Thank you, Eddie. It means a lot to me see you cry. That means a lot. We're gonna savor this moment, Vaughn. Make sure this was recorded. But no, thank you guys so much. And you know, the love Eddie talks about that I express to the team, we get that from you guys. And so, you know, we every year we brought in transfers from other places, and that second chance and third chance is a lot of times for those guys. But one of the resounding messages that they give us feedback on is that they sense the love, that the family that we talk about is not just something that we say. You know, if you go across any school across the country and you see their team, everyone gets slogans put on their shirts to work out in, and everybody has family. Everybody in the country has some version of the word family written on their shirt. Well, if everybody's saying it, well, what separates one from the other? Obviously, we spell ours differently, first and foremost. And I tell you, we're the #1 HBCU, so we know how to spell. That's for sure. But we spell it different because it is different, right? And you know, like most good families, yeah, sometimes we fight together. You know, we fight amongst each other, and that's any good family does, right? But when it comes time for us to fight someone else, we come together like no one can, and we support one another. And so, you know, that moment in history, many people look at it as a negative, but like Eddie said, I thought it was personally one of our finest moments because it showed the strength of the family. And with the support of our illustrious president, Dr. Robinson, Mike doing this role as the interim athletic director, the administration, I mean, it was just a time that we all came together, and it was amazing. It was beautiful. And so for our young men who often operate kind of in their own little silo, and we're trying to get them out of that, but for them to see the president and administrators in the locker room talking to them about the issues that they faced as students here at FAMU, and to see the commitment, it meant a lot to them. And so it wasn't so much my message to them. That had something to do with it. Obviously, as the head coach, it's my job to give them a message. But it was really maybe the first time a lot of those guys really got to see what that word family is all about, right? Because, you know, just as athletes, sometimes they do feel kind of as, yes, they're the show. Yes, they know that people come in droves to see them in the band. But sometimes that isolates them even more, believe it or not. Everyone comes to see them, but they feel isolated. Mike can attest to it as a football player. Eddie will tell you he knows what that's like, but we know that's not true. But they feel that. But again, so the love that you guys have continued to pour into them, it means the world. And they're so thankful for, again, I know they're thankful now because in that heat, they get to go into that BRZ. So every time they go in there, I know they're thanking you because it is hot out there. But it's a godsend with what you guys represent, what you stand for. We can't say enough how much we appreciate you. We look forward to continuing to represent FAMU in a first-class manner. And we're just thankful to have the leadership that we do, because without them, none of this is possible. Without you, none of this is possible. And so, again, we're thankful, we're grateful. Things are going extremely well. I will give a full update, but I know better that when my two bosses sit here beside me, I'm going to get this mic back and sit down. So Appreciate you guys. Love y'all. Go Raptors.
Coach. All right, Mr. President, I've got it together now. You know that. See, I could get emotional with Dr. Dr. Robinson and I go way back. I can remember some trips. I'm part of my athletic skills included being a runner. And I get up early in the morning and run too. And when we used to go on these trips, Dr. Robinson would be always behind me trying to catch up. I remember that. So I hope he's laughing because you're not gonna get too emotional here. But I remember when he came, and this is some of the things that the FAMU people do. One of the reasons that Dr. Robinson came, and I think that the President Humphreys played a role, and he wanted to produce more African American PhDs in the environmental sciences. And Dr. Robinson had a national reputation in terms of research. Had been selected to head a committee to do a research on how, I believe it was President Garfield. Was it President Garfield? I got that right. The research. Zachary Taylor. I thought it was Zach. But Dr. Robinson built I think it's the School of Environmental Science. But I do remember the Board of Regents, Dr. Robinson, saying that it was one of the fastest improved PhD programs that the Board of Regents ever approved so fast, which was a tribute to just how much of a expert he was in that area. And then the great things that he's done here, I won't go into all of that. But I will say, I think last year's football season was his finest hour too. Because when he spoke to the team and he called the team together, I think he told Coach Simmons that he wanted to speak to the team. But I think after he finished, I think the team sensed how he felt about them as students and as student athletes. And it showed in what happened after that, in terms of we now have 6 or 7 compliance officers. We brought in Tiffany Dawn Sykes as athletic director, who told me that, Eddie, I need you to advise me on how I need to get things right up here. But it's in very difficult times, it's how you respond. And I think that was the president's finest hour, that particular moment. And Mike, for the last time. Let me hold Reverend Holmes. Mr. President, if you don't mind, have one more presentation. Reverend Holmes couldn't make it, and so we're going to make sure that James Matthews, Matt, they made a typo on Reverend Holmes' flag. It wasn't our error because the 220 quarterback club don't make mistakes. But somehow they got reverend instead of reverend. So yeah, you just keep it to me, and Jerry will get it fixed. But I wanted to recognize Reverend Holmes because I remember when FAMU was when we first got in trouble athletically. I don't know if you guys know it, but when Ken Riley left as athletic director, we had reportedly a couple of $1 million surplus in the athletic department, but we went on hard times real fast. And when we started the 220 quarterback club, we were just giving the program $500 a week to help with recruitment. And believe me, $500 a week back then was big for the athletic program because they were in dire shape. And so Reverend Holmes started a fundraising program. Matt, how much money did he raise? How much? Over 100. I thought it was pretty close to $200,000. And a quick story. Yeah, you had to give $1,000. Al Borders in the back, he was a graduate of FAMU, but is a true rattler. He gave $1,000. I remember that too. Dr. Lilla Walker gave $1,000. Oh, so you didn't give it yourself? Yeah, got to give it yourself, Doc. But he I think that was the most money raised at that time. And a quick point about that, it turned out that the person who had given the most, and it was a check for $25,000, was a member of the Florida legislature who was an FSU graduate, and Colonel Joey, lieutenant colonel in Fort Lauderdale, didn't want an FSU graduate to be the largest contributor to this fundraising program, and he sent a check for $25,001, I think. I don't remember his name. It was Ferguson, yeah. But that's the way the Rattlers respond. So, Mr. Matthews, if you would come forward. QUarterback Quarterback Club Unsung Rattler Award presented to Reverend R. Holmes for outstanding service, often beyond the call of duty, on behalf of the Rattler football team and the 220 Quarterback Club. Mr. Matthews.
Thank you, Eddie. Reverend Holmes regrets that he can't be with us today, but he sends his support, and as we know, he always supports the Rattlers. And Mr. President, I did this last year, and I thought I would have some challenge. I thought somebody would meet the challenge from another church, but that hadn't happened yet. So I'm going to ask all the members of Bethel Missionary Baptist Church to stand. You remember Bethel Missionary Baptist Church, please stand. And I got Deacon Ozzie Johnson back there, and we have a few Bethel members standing. On behalf of Bethel Missionary Baptist Church, where Reverend R. Holmes is the pastor, I have a check here for $3,000 for the football nutrition program here at Florida A&M University. And on behalf of the church, Eddie, I want to present this to you, and thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Took a little while for some of those members of Bethel to stand. They didn't. Y'all don't know which Bethel you belong to. Mr. President, it's time for me to get up from here and get out the way for somebody to make me cry for real. But Mr. President, I was talking about you starting the School of Environmental Science, and I thought about how you brought us through the pandemic stronger than going into the pandemic. And I remember all the comments I saw in the newspaper about the FAMU COVID testing operation. If you read the paper, you saw a lot of those. These are some of the things that we sometimes go unnoticed that don't give credit to. But that COVID operation was a first-rate run operation. And we're going to have to get the Dean of Allied Health over here for one of these plaques this year as well. So the president, as I was saying, I think when the president was speaking to the team, I think they sensed in him how strongly he felt about them as students and student athletes. And you can see, as I was saying, what happened after he spoke to the team. And we now have a new athletic director who's making things happen. And Tiffany, I was going to say this next week, but I'll just say it right now. You know, we haven't applauded this, but you know, we've known for a few months now who is eligible through compliance to play football this coming season, and we've known for a few months now. And Tiffany, I think you deserve a round of applause for that. That was a major achievement. We don't have to worry about eligibility anymore. If you are a football player and you need a course to become eligible and you pass the summer, you can play. If you don't pass, you don't play. So all the people getting on the bus will be eligible. All right. Our new VP has seen to that, and she did it quickly. And I think she did it before all these compliance officers got here. So that was, I don't know how she did that. I think I did give her a point or two. But Mr. President, if you would come forward, 220 Quarterback Club Unsung Rattler Award presented to President Larry Robinson, PhD, for leading the university through the COVID pandemic and establishing the most fully staffed, fully resourced athletic department in FAMU's history. Mr. President.
Thank you, Eddie, and thank you, members of the 220 Club, for your support of Florida A&M University, and in particular our athletic program. But what you do there helps the overall university, because our athletes are students too. That's really part of the message. But I do want to just go back and acknowledge Dean Perry again, because when I first came on FAMU's payroll, and I had been a visiting professor in 1995, I came on the FAMU's payroll in 1997, and we were in the sort of the final stages of construction of what's now the Humphreys Research Building, right? But the person who chaired the committee to ensure that that construction happened on cost and on time was Dean Perry. And so, Dean, thank you so much for that. Not just because we were the first occupants of the building, but I don't think we could have gotten there without that facility, because some of you might know my first office was the old physical plant building down Perkins Way, right? But thank you, Dean Perry, for that, right? And then also, if y'all think Mike was Mr. Excitement when he played football, you should have saw him this weekend. We were trying to get to, the stadium where, the event was. Oh man, it was something else. We had come all that way. We left Friday night from after the commencement program, 9 o'clock or so. We're on the road. We had to drive to Atlanta because there were no flights out of Tallahassee. And, we got off the plane and we basically got to rent a car, had to go down. We met Mike, rendezvous with him, changed cars, and we got there in plenty of time. Of course, Mike forgot that I was following him a time or two, but I managed to get in there behind him. I said, boy, he must think he's playing football. So I got there behind him, and then we made it probably, 2 blocks away. We ran into the most ridiculous traffic jam I've ever seen. I wish y'all was with us so that you would never complain about traffic at a FAMU football game if you went to that event. But it was only really by the grace of God, I really have to tell you. And the fact that the person who received it before Ken Riley, he went on and on and on and on. And we were sitting there on the bus and keep going, brother. Keep keep it going. But we managed to see it all, right? And it's something that, it's much more inspirational to be there. The video was fine, but to be in that audience and hear and see all that orange and green from Rattlers being there was really an inspirational moment for me. I think one of the best that I've had here at the institution. I do want to say, too, that You know, Dr. Humphreys is responsible for me being here, Eddie. The Environmental Sciences Program had been established in 1995, approved by the former Board of Regents. With our first graduate program, it started in 1996. Okay. Now, here's where things got interesting because I was supposed to come in the fall of 1996 as director of the Environmental Sciences Institute, but something happened, right? I mean, it wasn't because of me, it was just something that happened on the FAMU end and I couldn't get here. And so Dr. Humphreys called me in Oak Creek. I'm out in the yard, you know, picking, you know, flowers and having a good time chasing away bugs. I get this call. My wife said, somebody on the phone needs to talk to you. And it was Dr. Humphreys, right? You know, I can't use the kind of language he used in front of ladies. But part of the message was kind of like, where in the hell are you? I can say that, right? Why aren't you down here? So, you know, I hadn't been talked to like that since I was like a 12-year-old. So I had to get down there. So I made it in January 1997. We had a master's program. Then a year later, we implemented the bachelor's program. In 1999, the PhD program. That's why it was one of the quickest, you know, PhD program development in FAMU's history. But I had a great team of people there that made it happen. What really kept me motivated during those early years, however, was Eddie Jackson, right? Because when I went to the track and run, there was this older gentleman that kept passing me by. Right? I mean, he just kept going. And so, you know, one of these days, you know, of course, I was tying my shoes when he was passing me by, but he kept me motivated, right? And so, any more than anybody else, Dr. Humphreys or anybody else, you're the reason I'm here today. So thank you for that. And then, Mike, I do want to give you a huge shout out because it took a Herculean effort to get us through last year's event with the football team, right? And I do think we have an obligation to our student athletes like everybody else. We have to serve them properly. And then there are expectations the other way around too. However, what Coach Simmons didn't tell y'all, the reason the dark cloud defense was so good, he gave them a little shield that every offensive player that approached them, they saw the words Larry Robinson on the jersey. And they lit into it, right? I mean, it was a long time before anybody scored a touchdown, right? Can you remember the last time we lost at Bragg Stadium? No, you can't. But anyway, that's the secret weapon that they use to do that. But anyway, I want to thank y'all very much for this acknowledgement. I do want to acknowledge VP Sykes as well. Just remember this, she's not new anymore. Y'all go at her, right? Because you already have been, right? It was day one, before she even got here, she said, Mr. President, who are these people calling me about free season tickets? I haven't gotten there yet, but no, I'm just kidding. But she's really hit the ground running, done some wonderful things already. And as Eddie said, you know, I think we have 6 of those 7 compliance officers. Still working on that number 7. And then we have 5 academic advisors for athletics. You know, a couple of them are in athletics, a couple of them everywhere. But to make this program work, you know, we had to take away the sort of silo approach. And so we have a team of people who work with Mike and AD Sykes to ensure that everything is moving well with that program. All of athletics. Some of you probably have visited the stadium. You see this mammoth scoreboard going up, right? You saw that? It's incredible, right? We can compete with the people on Paris Street now, right? I mean, I remember a time when the 100 first came back, you know, we had to go and tell the people on Paris Street, can y'all turn the music down? We can't hear the band, right? So I think we got that covered this year. And then for your information, we're also adding a new school board in the Lawson Center, and eventually, not like years from now, but on short order, Gaither Gymnasium as well. AD Sykes and Mike, they're all supervising those projects along with our facilities people, you know, redoing the parking lot and all of that. I hope none of you lost your parking spaces. Don't complain with me. There she is right over there. Stop calling me. You know, she can handle it, right? But you know, it's gonna be a wonderful season, y'all. Let's just come out and let these young men and women know how much we love them. Because I tell people in the world of HBCUs, you know, this love and concern and compassion for our students, that's really our secret sauce, right? I tell parents all of the time, you can send your sons and daughters anywhere, but nowhere are they going to get the kind of love and nurturing that they get at places like Florida A&M University. There's just no place. You know, I've seen it myself. Started at an HBCU and went to PWI, and then another private, uh, uh, predominantly white institution. There's nothing like that 1 year that I spent at Lamorno in college. That's the secret sauce, right? That love, sincere love, and realizing that without these young people out in the world, right, it's not going to be right. Our futures will be uncertain. And so we have an obligation to make sure that make every young man and woman feel like they belong at the institution and that they belong in whatever they aspire to become as they come to us as students. And I end on this because speaking of students, we had a record year. You probably heard and read about it in terms of the number of applications to FAMU this year. Over 21,000 students applied, you know, for first time in college students, something like 26,000 overall for graduate and professional schools. But that was a record. It's about an 85% increase over last year, right? And then, of course, Eddie, of course, you could have gotten in, but I wouldn't have gotten in. The average high school GPA for students who were admitted to FAMU is like 3.94. So I know Dr. Walker could have gotten in, and well, that's about it, right? But anyway, I'm sorry. No, but I know I couldn't have gotten in, but it's a changing world out there, and the Supreme Court decision on affirmative action is going to also be a game changer as well for all colleges and schools, in particular HBCUs. I was on a panel in Martha's Vineyard with the Hampton president last week, and we talked about those potential impacts, and it's going to change some things, right? Some very smart students who may not have gotten into Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and other places are going to look at some other institutions, and I think FAMU will be among those institutions they look to, but they're going to come with an expectation, you know, for significant financial support, right? Because if you didn't have it at Harvard, you weren't going to go because you couldn't afford it anyway. So that's going to be a game changer.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I want to thank you for your $1,000 contribution to the cooling facility. However, we have a campaign for nutrition now, and I just just want to throw that out, Mr. President. You know, I forgot, and Selvin, you should have reminded me. We like to start out our program with a statement from our director of the booster program, Selvin. I just completely forgot, but you'll come up real quick. Mr. Selvin Carr, please.
Hello to everyone. I haven't had the opportunity to speak to individually. I want to be very quick and brief. I have one thing to ask of you, and well, two things. The other last thing too. One thing I'm going to ask of you is to purchase a ticket or a table to our kickoff luncheon. This is going to be August the 27th, starting at 2:00, end at 4:00. Going to be at the Lawson Center. A VIP table, don't know how many we got left, but not many. It's $450. A regular table is $400. The individual ticket is $50. If you come and you want to give a donation, we will take those as well. That's the first thing. The second thing I want to mention to you is we need members. We need members of the Rattler Booster organization. Now, the chairman of our membership committee, Melody Hadley, she has a tag in her hand. This is what the 2023 Rattler Booster tag looks like. If Melody, stand up and so everyone can see those tags. If you meet someone in their cars and they don't have that tag in front of them, you ask them why not. Okay? All right. That's it for me, Mr. Jackson. Thank you. I'll sit back and enjoy the program.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody first time here? No first time here, people. Anybody who was first time here last week and I didn't know it? Who is that? Who? You mind telling us who you are? Oh, Family High. Oh, okay. Welcome. Remember next be yes. What? No, I don't know. What, Matt? Well, I wanted. Oh, okay. I wanted to save her for next week. Now we don't want.
Mike, goodness gracious. last year. So many that we had to shut off sales to the Investing in Champions packages with the exception of the Green Rattler package. So if you did not purchase your package, there are no more packages available with additional amenities. The only thing that's available is the Green Rattler package with the season tickets and the parking spaces. So I encourage you to purchase those while we still have those available. We did have an incredible showing in Canton, Ohio. Vaughn, thank you so much. He really led the charge on galvanizing our particular football alumni to participate in the float. I know he's rolling his eyes because it was a lot of work, but I was happy to hand it off to somebody. I sent my team up on Thursday, and Vaughn went up early too. And I mean, it cost us some money. I mean, it cost us $1,000 to enter the parade. It cost us $3,000 to have a parade, the float built. It cost us thousands of dollars to have shirts made for the people to ride in it. But I mean, this was a once in a lifetime experience for so many people that I wanted to make sure it was done right, no matter the expense. With that being said, you can always make donations to the Rattler Athletic Fund to make our accounts whole again for that representation. But no, it was a really, really great time. I wasn't fully prepared to speak today, but I'm happy to answer 5 questions. Who was the band? So I'm happy to tell you about the band. So the Riley family made the request for the Marching 100 to participate, but because they're transitioning and weren't in school at the time, I got online and I Googled Black high schools in Ohio, right? And so I found one that said they had an HBCU style marching band, and I kind of floated it. But you know who's from Ohio? Mike. And so no sooner than I could think about it, Mike had called to, I think, the principal, the superintendent, the governor, the mayor, the band director, whomever, and had them on the phone. And they were super excited to participate. I reached back out to the family and got their blessing to allow that high school band. They were excited to allow the high school students to have that experience to participate. But they are the Shaw High School Marching Cardinal Marching Band out of Cleveland, Ohio. And an alum actually sponsored all of their lunches. So Carmen worked with an alum that was in the area who paid for all their meals. We just paid for their shirts, and we had to pay them an entertainment fee. But I got a lot of good feedback about them. Number 2. They